The morning Delilah Sawyer was meant to marry Herbert Thornton, she stole her father's fur-lined coat and rode straight into the worst blizzard Wyoming had seen in 20 years. She had turned 22 just 3 days before, and her father had presented her engagement to Herbert as a birthday gift, as if she should be grateful. Herbert Thornton was 53 years old, owned half the cattle ranches around Cheyenne, and had buried 2 wives already. When he looked at Delilah, his eyes were cold and calculating, like he was assessing livestock at auction. She had smiled through the birthday dinner, nodded when expected, and began planning her escape the moment she retired to her room. The wind howled so fiercely that Delilah could barely see 3 feet ahead of her horse. Snow whipped against her face, stinging like needles, and she pulled the coat tighter around her body. Her mare, Rosie, whinnied nervously but kept moving forward into the white void. Delilah had no destination in mind, only the desperate need to get away from the life that had been arranged for her without her consent. She had left before dawn, taking only what she could carry in her saddlebags. Some dried meat, a canteen of water that was already starting to freeze, matches, and the little money she had saved from selling her mother's jewelry piece by piece over the past year. Her mother had died when Delilah was 16, and without her gentle protection, Delilah's father had become increasingly tyrannical, more concerned with social standing and financial gain than his daughter's happiness. The cold was unlike anything Delilah had experienced. It seemed to seep through every layer of clothing, through skin and muscle, straight into her bones. Her fingers were numb despite her gloves, and she could no longer feel her toes in her boots. Rosie was struggling now, her steps becoming slower and more labored through the deepening snow. Delilah knew they couldn't continue much longer, but turning back meant marriage to Herbert, meant a life of silent dinners and cold touches and slow death of her spirit. She would rather die out here in the snow, free. The thought had barely formed when Rosie stumbled, and Delilah felt herself sliding sideways. She hit the snow hard, the impact knocking the breath from her lungs. For a moment she lay there, gasping, the world spinning white above her. When she tried to stand, her legs wouldn't cooperate. The cold had sapped her strength more than she realized. Rosie stood nearby, head lowered against the wind, steam rising from her nostrils. Delilah crawled toward her horse, thinking she could use the stirrup to pull herself up, but her hands were too numb to grip properly. She fell again, face down in the snow, and felt a wave of despair wash over her. This was it. She would freeze to death out here, and they would find her body in the spring thaw. At least she would die free, she told herself. At least there was that, the sound of another horse cut through the wind. Delilah tried to lift her head, squinting against the driving snow. A dark shape materialized through the white curtain, growing larger. A rider on a massive bay horse, moving with surprising confidence through the blizzard. The horse stopped a few feet away, and the rider dismounted in one fluid motion. "Madam, are you hurt?" The voice was male, deep, with genuine concern. Delilah tried to answer, but her teeth were chattering too violently. She felt strong hands grip her arms, lifting her as easily as if she weighed nothing. Through the snow crusted on her eyelashes, she caught a glimpse of a face partially obscured by a thick scarf, but she could see his eyes. They were blue, startlingly blue, like clear sky after a storm. "My horse," she managed to say. "I have her," he said. "Can you ride?" "I do not think so." Without another word, he lifted her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. His arm came around her waist, solid and secure, pulling her back against his chest. The warmth of his body was shocking after the bone-deep cold. He gathered the reins of both horses and urged them forward. "Where are we going?" Delilah asked, her voice weak. "My cabin." "It is not far, hold on." She had no choice but to lean against him, to let his strength support her as they moved through the blizzard. She was dimly aware that she should be afraid. She knew nothing about this man. He could be anyone, could have any intentions. But the cold had stripped away her capacity for fear, leaving only the animal need for survival. And right now, this stranger was her only hope. The cabin appeared suddenly, a dark shape against the white. It was small but solid, built of thick logs with a stone chimney. Smoke rose from the chimney, snatched away immediately by the wind. He guided the horses to a lean-to attached to the side of the cabin, providing some shelter from the storm. He dismounted first, then reached up for her. Delilah tried to swing her leg over, but her body would not obey. She simply fell forward and he caught her, lifting her down. Her legs buckled the moment her feet touched the ground. "I have got you," he said, and scooped her up in his arms like she was a child. He carried her to the cabin door, somehow managing to open it while still holding her, and brought her inside. The warmth hit her like a physical force. A fire burned in the stone fireplace, filling the single room with blessed heat. He set her down in a chair near the fire, then went back outside. Delilah heard him moving around, tending to the horses. She sat trembling, unable to do anything but absorb the heat. When he came back inside, stamping snow from his boots, she got her first clear look at him. He was young, probably not much older than she was, maybe 25 or 26. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair curling slightly at his collar and those remarkable blue eyes. His face was handsome in a rugged way, with strong features and a day's worth of stubble on his jaw. He shrugged out of his heavy coat and hung it on a peg by the door, then unwound the scarf from his face. "We need to get you out of those wet clothes," he said matter-of-factly. "You are showing signs of frostbite." Delilah's face flushed despite the cold still in her bones. "I cannot. I will turn my back," he said. "But those clothes need to come off and you need to get warm. There are blankets on the bed. Wrap yourself in those." He turned away, busying himself at the small stove in the corner. With clumsy, shaking fingers, Delilah began to remove her coat. Everything was stiff with ice and snow. Her fingers were so numb that she could barely manage the buttons. After watching her struggle for a moment, the man sighed. "May I help?" he asked, still with his back turned. "I will only do what is necessary. You have my word as a gentleman." "You are a gentleman?" Delilah asked, and was surprised to hear a note of humor in her own voice. "Out here alone in a cabin. My name is Benjamin Oliver," he said. "I work cattle and I own this land. I am not an outlaw if that is what you are asking. Now may I help before you lose your fingers to frostbite?" "Yes," Delilah whispered. "Please." He turned and came to her, kneeling in front of the chair. Up close she could see the concern in his eyes. He worked quickly and efficiently, helping her out of the frozen coat, then the layers beneath. When he got to her dress, which was soaked and frozen at the hem, he met her eyes. "I will cut it off," he said. "It will be faster and easier." She nodded, too cold and exhausted to care about modesty. He produced a knife and carefully cut through the fabric, peeling it away from her skin. When he got to her undergarments, he stood and went to the bed, returning with 2 thick wool blankets. "Can you manage the rest?" he asked, holding up the blankets to shield her from his view. "Yes," she said. She somehow removed the rest of her wet things and wrapped herself in the blankets. The wool was scratchy against her skin, but blessedly warm. Benjamin still had the blankets held up, his gaze directed firmly at the ceiling. "I am covered," she said. He lowered the blankets and nodded. "Good, sit by the fire. I am going to make you something hot to drink." Delilah moved to a spot right in front of the fireplace, sitting on the floor with the blankets wrapped tightly around her. The heat from the fire was almost painful as feeling began to return to her extremities. She watched Benjamin move around the small cabin with easy familiarity. He hung her wet clothes on a line strung near the fire, then went to work at the stove. The cabin was simple but well kept. One room with a bed in the corner, a table with 2 chairs, the stove, shelves with supplies and books, and the fireplace. There were no personal touches, no photographs or decorations, but it felt lived in, cared for. A place of solitude but not loneliness. Benjamin brought her a tin cup filled with something that steamed. "Coffee with whiskey," he said. "Drink it slowly." She took the cup in both hands, grateful for the warmth against her palms. The first sip burned all the way down, but the second was better. The whiskey spread warmth through her chest, and the coffee was strong and bitter and exactly what she needed. Benjamin pulled one of the chairs closer to the fire and sat down, his own cup in hand. He studied her for a long moment, and she felt herself flush under his gaze. "What were you doing out there?" he asked finally. "In a blizzard," Delilah stared into her cup. "Running away." "From what?" "A marriage I did not want." Understanding crossed his face. "So you rode into a blizzard instead." It seemed preferable at the time. To her surprise, he laughed. It was a warm sound, genuine and without mockery. "That must have been quite a marriage to run from." "The man is old enough to be my father," Delilah said, the words spilling out. "He has already buried 2 wives. My father arranged it without asking me, without caring what I wanted. I am to be sold like cattle, traded for social standing and business connections. I could not." Her voice broke. "I could not do it." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, his blue eyes thoughtful. "What is your name?" "Delilah Sawyer." His eyebrows rose. "Richard Sawyer's daughter from Cheyenne?" "You know my father." "I know of him. He is a prominent man. They will be searching for you." "Let them search," Delilah said bitterly. "I will not go back." "You do not have to go back," Benjamin said quietly. "Not if you do not wish to." She looked at him in surprise. "What do you mean?" "I mean you have a choice," he said. "You just exercised it by riding into that blizzard. Maybe it was not the wisest choice, but it was yours. That matters." Tears stung Delilah's eyes, and she blinked them back fiercely. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, as if her choices mattered, as if she had the right to decide her own fate. "The storm will blow itself out by tomorrow," Benjamin continued. "When it does, you can decide what you want to do, go back or go somewhere else. But for tonight, you are safe here." "Why are you helping me?" Delilah asked. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. "My mother was forced into a marriage she did not want," he said finally. "My father was a hard man, cruel. She endured it for years before she finally found the courage to leave. She took me and my sister, and we ran. It was the bravest thing I have ever seen anyone do. So when I saw you out there, freezing in the snow rather than go through with an unwanted marriage, I thought of her. I thought someone should help you the way I wished someone had helped her sooner." "Where is your mother now?" Delilah asked softly. "She died 2 years ago. Pneumonia. But she had 10 good years of freedom first. She always said those 10 years were worth everything that came before. I am sorry for your loss. Thank you." He stood and went to the stove, ladling something from a pot into a bowl. "You need to eat. It is just stew, but it is hot." The stew was simple but good, thick with meat and vegetables. Delilah had not realized how hungry she was until she started eating. Benjamin ate his own portion in silence, giving her space to process everything that had happened. Outside, the wind continued to howl and snow hissed against the window. Inside, the fire crackled and the cabin was warm, and for the first time in months, Delilah felt like she could breathe. When she finished eating, exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Benjamin noticed her eyelids drooping. "You should sleep," he said, taking her empty bowl. "Take the bed, I will sleep by the fire." "I cannot take your bed," Delilah protested. "You can and you will. You are still recovering from exposure. You need proper rest." His tone left no room for argument. Too tired to fight, Delilah made her way to the bed, still wrapped in the blankets. The mattress was surprisingly comfortable, stuffed with what felt like feathers. She sank into it with a sigh, her eyes already closing. "Benjamin," she said sleepily. "Yes, thank you for saving my life." "You are welcome, Delilah Sawyer. Sleep now." She wanted to say more, to ask him 1,000 questions, but sleep pulled her under like a tide. Her last conscious thought was that his name sounded right in her mind, solid and dependable, like the man himself. When Delilah woke, weak sunlight was streaming through the window. The storm had passed. She sat up, disoriented for a moment before remembering where she was. Benjamin was at the stove, his back to her, making breakfast from the smell of it. Her clothes hung on the line, dry now. She noticed he had laid out one of his own shirts and a pair of trousers on the end of the bed, far too large for her but clean and dry. "Good morning," he said without turning around. "Your clothes are dry, but they are fairly torn up from yesterday. You are welcome to wear those until we can figure something else out." Delilah grabbed the shirt and trousers and dressed quickly under the blankets, her face burning. The clothes were indeed far too large, but she managed to roll up the sleeves and use a piece of rope as a belt for the trousers. When she emerged from behind the blanket, Benjamin turned and looked at her, his lips twitched into a smile. "Well, it is not fashionable, but it is practical." "I must look ridiculous," Delilah said, but she found herself smiling too. "You look like someone who survived a blizzard and lived to tell about it. That is nothing to be ashamed of." He gestured to the table. "Sit. Eggs and bacon." They ate in companionable silence. The food was simple but well prepared, and Delilah found herself watching Benjamin as he ate. There was something calming about him, an unshakable steadiness that made her feel safe. When they finished, he poured more coffee for both of them. "The storm has passed," he said. "So we need to talk about what happens next." Delilah's stomach clenched. "Yes, I suppose we do. Your father will be searching for you. Herbert Thornton, too, I imagine. They will have men out looking, checking every town and homestead within riding distance." He paused. "Eventually, someone will come here. This is not exactly hidden." "Then I will leave," Delilah said. "I will not bring trouble to your door." "Where will you go?" She had no answer. She had run without a plan, driven only by desperation. "I do not know. Denver, perhaps, or further west, California." "Do you have money, supplies?" "Some money, not much." Benjamin was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming on the table. "There is another option," he said finally. "What?" He met her eyes. "Marry me instead." Delilah stared at him, certain she had misheard. "What did you say, marry me?" he repeated. "If you are already married, your father cannot force you into marriage with Thornton. The law would be on your side." "But you do not even know me," Delilah said, her voice faint. "And I do not know you." "That is true," Benjamin acknowledged. "But I know you are brave enough to ride into a blizzard for your freedom. I know you would rather die than be forced into something against your will. That tells me more about your character than most people reveal in years of acquaintance. But marriage, that is so permanent." "So is freezing to death," he said dryly. "Look, I am not proposing a love match. I am proposing a solution. You need protection from being forced into an unwanted marriage. I can provide that. In return, you would have a home here, safety, and the freedom to make your own choices about your future." "What do you get out of it?" Delilah asked suspiciously. He shrugged. "Company, perhaps. This is a lonely life, running cattle out here alone. And honestly, the satisfaction of knowing I helped someone avoid the fate my mother endured for so long, that matters to me." Delilah stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered landscape sparkling in the weak sunlight. Her mind was spinning. Another marriage proposal, but this one so different from Herbert Thornton's cold calculation. Benjamin was offering her a choice, presenting an option rather than a command. And he was right that being married would protect her legally from her father's machinations. "What would this marriage look like?" she asked, still facing the window. "What would you expect of me?" "Nothing you do not wish to give," Benjamin said. "You would have your own space, your own life. We would be partners, not master and servant. Beyond that, I suppose we would figure it out as we go. And if I wanted to leave someday, then you would leave." "I am not looking for a prisoner, Delilah. I am offering you a choice, not a different cage." She turned to face him. He sat at the table, his blue eyes steady on hers, waiting patiently for her answer. There was no pressure in his gaze, no manipulation. Just honest concern and a genuine desire to help. "Why?" she asked softly. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because someone should have done it for my mother," he said simply. "Because you deserve better than being sold off like livestock. Because it is the right thing to do." Delilah thought of Herbert Thornton's cold eyes, her father's indifference to her happiness, the suffocating life that awaited her in Cheyenne. Then she looked at Benjamin, at this stranger who had saved her life and was now offering her a way to save her future. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "it would need to be a real marriage, at least in the eyes of the law. Otherwise, my father could challenge it." "Agreed." "And I would want to contribute. I will not be a burden. I can cook, clean, help with the ranch work. I may have been raised in town, but I am not afraid of hard work. I would welcome the help." She took a deep breath. "Then yes, I will marry you, Benjamin Oliver." He stood and crossed to her, extending his hand. "Then we have an agreement, Delilah Sawyer." She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm and strong, calloused from hard work. They shook on it solemnly, sealing an arrangement that was equal parts practical and absurd. "There is a preacher in town, about 3 hours' ride south," Benjamin said. "Small place called Medicine Bow. We can go tomorrow if you are feeling strong enough. Get properly married and make it legal. My father will hear about it eventually. Let him. By then, it will be too late for him to do anything about it." Delilah nodded, a strange mixture of terror and relief flooding through her. She was jumping from the fire into the frying pan, marrying a man she had known for less than a day. But somehow, it felt different. It felt like her choice. They spent the rest of the day in a strange sort of domesticity. Benjamin went out to tend to his cattle, checking on them after the storm. Delilah cleaned the cabin, doing her best to make herself useful. She found flour and managed to make biscuits, which came out reasonably well. When Benjamin returned, stamping snow from his boots, he sniffed appreciatively. "Something smells good," he said. "Just biscuits. I hope they are edible." He tried one and nodded. "More than edible. These are good." Over dinner, they talked. Benjamin told her about his ranch, how he had been building it up for the past 3 years. It was small but growing, and he had plans to expand. He spoke with quiet pride about his work, about the cattle and the land. Delilah found herself watching his hands as he talked, noting how they moved with certainty and competence. She told him about her life in Cheyenne, about her mother's death and her father's increasing coldness, about her love of reading and her secret dream of seeing the ocean someday. Benjamin listened without judgment, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested. "Why cattle ranching?" Delilah asked. "You seem educated. You could have done other things." "I like the independence," Benjamin said. "Out here, a man succeeds or fails on his own merit. What matters is the work you do, not who your father is or what family you come from. I wanted to build something that was mine, something I earned with my own hands." That makes sense, Delilah said softly. I think I have always wanted something similar, to know that my life was my own, not just an extension of my father's ambitions. Well, now you will have that chance, Benjamin said, for better or worse. That night, Benjamin again insisted she take the bed while he slept by the fire. Delilah lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the fire. Tomorrow, she would become Benjamin Oliver's wife. The thought was surreal, terrifying, and oddly comforting all at once. The next morning dawned clear and cold. They prepared for the ride to Medicine Bow in quiet efficiency. Delilah wore her own clothes, now dry and mended as best as Benjamin could manage. He had sewn up the worst of the tears with surprising skill. "My mother taught me," he said when he noticed her looking. "Said a man should know how to mend his own clothes and cook his own food, made me learn both. She sounds like she was a wise woman." She was. The ride to Medicine Bow took longer than expected due to the snow, but the horses were fresh, and the sky remained clear. Delilah rode Rosie, who seemed none the worse for their ordeal in the blizzard. Benjamin rode beside her on his bay gelding, whose name, she learned, was Duke. Medicine Bow was indeed small, barely more than a handful of buildings clustered around a crossroads. But there was a general store, a saloon, and a small white church with a cross on top. Benjamin led them to the church and helped Delilah dismount. The preacher was a small, round man with kind eyes and a warm smile. His name was Reverend Harrison, and he listened to their story without interruption. When Benjamin finished explaining their situation, omitting the part about Delilah running away, the Reverend studied them both carefully. "This is quite sudden," he said. "Are you both certain this is what you want?" "Yes," Benjamin said firmly. Delilah hesitated for only a moment. "Yes," she echoed. "Very well. I will need witnesses. Let me fetch my wife and the shopkeeper." The ceremony was brief and simple. Delilah stood beside Benjamin in the small church, the winter sunlight streaming through the windows, and repeated the words that bound her life to his. When the Reverend pronounced them husband and wife, Benjamin turned to her. "May I?" he asked softly. She understood what he was asking. "Yes." He kissed her gently, a brief touch of lips that was more symbolic than romantic. But Delilah felt something shift in her chest, some recognition that this was real now. She was married to this man, this stranger who had saved her life. They signed the marriage certificate, the witnesses added their names, and it was done. Delilah Sawyer was now Delilah Oliver, wife of Benjamin Oliver. As they left the church, marriage certificate safely tucked in Benjamin's coat pocket, Delilah felt lighter than she had in months. On the ride back to the cabin, Benjamin was quiet. Delilah kept glancing at him, trying to read his expression. Was he regretting his impulsive offer? Wondering what he had gotten himself into? "You are thinking very loudly," Benjamin said suddenly, glancing over at her. "I am wondering what you are thinking," Delilah admitted. He was quiet for a moment. "I am thinking that I just got married to a woman I met 2 days ago. That is not something I ever imagined myself doing." "Are you regretting it?" "No," he said, and he sounded surprised. "No, I am not. Are you?" Delilah considered. "No," she said finally. "I am scared and I have no idea what I am doing, but I am not sorry." "Good. That is a start." When they reached the cabin, they fell into the routine they had already begun to establish. Benjamin went to tend the animals. Delilah started preparing dinner. It was strange and domestic and oddly comfortable. That night, Benjamin made a show of arranging blankets by the fire again. "You can take the bed," Delilah said. "We are married now. It is your home. I cannot keep displacing you." "The bed is big enough for 2, Benjamin said carefully. "If you are comfortable with that, I will stay on my side, you on yours, just for sleeping. Nothing more, I promise you that." Delilah thought about it. She was tired of him sleeping on the hard floor, and the bed was indeed quite large. And despite everything, she trusted him. He had kept every promise he had made to her so far. "All right," she said, "but you stay on your side." "I will not move an inch," he promised. That night they lay on opposite sides of the bed, a careful distance between them. Delilah was acutely aware of his presence, of his breathing, the warmth of another person sharing her space. It should have been uncomfortable, but instead it felt oddly safe. She fell asleep more easily than she had in months. The days began to form a pattern. Benjamin would rise before dawn to tend the cattle and do the heavy ranch work. Delilah would prepare breakfast, clean the cabin, and slowly begin to explore her new home. She found she enjoyed the work, the tangible results of her efforts. In Cheyenne, her days had been filled with pointless social calls and needlework she had no interest in. Here, everything she did mattered, contributed to their survival. Benjamin proved to be a patient teacher. When she asked to learn about the ranch work, he showed her how to feed the cattle, how to check for signs of illness, how to repair fencing. She made mistakes, many of them, but he never lost his temper or made her feel foolish. He would simply show her again, explaining patiently until she understood. In the evenings, they would sit by the fire and talk. Delilah discovered that Benjamin was well-read, his shelves full of books he had collected over the years. They discussed stories and ideas, debated politics and philosophy. He had opinions but listened to hers with genuine interest, never dismissing her thoughts as frivolous. One evening, about a week after their marriage, Benjamin came in from checking the cattle looking troubled. "What is wrong?" Delilah asked, setting down the book she had been reading. There were writers asking questions in Medicine Bow today. "Tom Henderson rode out to tell me." Tom was a neighboring rancher, one of the few people Benjamin counted as a friend. "They were asking about a young woman describing you. Said there was a reward for information leading to your safe return." Delilah's stomach dropped. "My father, or Thornton, maybe both." Benjamin sat down heavily. "They will work their way to every homestead eventually. Might be here tomorrow, might be a few days, but they will come." "What should we do?" "Tell them the truth. That you are my wife now, legally married. There is nothing they can do about that." He looked at her seriously. "But you need to be prepared. Your father will try to convince you to leave with him. He will make promises, threats, probably both. You need to be ready for that." "I will not go with him," Delilah said firmly. "I made my choice. Even if he threatens to make trouble for me, for this ranch, especially then, I will not let him manipulate me using you." Benjamin smiled slightly. "You are stronger than you think, Delilah Oliver." Hearing her new name still gave her a little thrill. She was not Delilah Sawyer anymore, not the dutiful daughter expected to smile and obey. She was Delilah Oliver, wife of a cattle rancher, making her own choices. The riders came 2 days later. Delilah was kneading bread dough when she heard the sound of horses approaching. She wiped her hands on her apron and went to the door, her heart pounding. Benjamin was out checking on a cow that was about to calve, but he would hear the horses and come quickly. There were 3 men. One was her father, looking older and grimmer than she remembered. One was a man she did not recognize, probably hired help. And the third was Herbert Thornton. Thornton was a tall man, thin to the point of gauntness, with graying hair and pale eyes. He sat his horse with the posture of someone accustomed to command, to having his wishes obeyed. Looking at him, Delilah felt a wave of revulsion. This was the man who would have been her husband, who would have had legal ownership of her body and her life. The thought made her skin crawl. "Delilah," her father said, dismounting. His voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "Thank God you are alive. We have been searching everywhere for you." "Hello, father," Delilah said coolly. She did not step away from the door, did not invite them inside. "What happened? Are you hurt? Did someone take you?" He looked around at the modest cabin and his expression hardened. "Did he force you to come here?" "No one forced me to do anything," Delilah said. "I left of my own free will." "You are confused," Thornton said, speaking for the first time. His voice was oily, condescending. "The ordeal you have been through has obviously affected your thinking. Come, we will take you home, get you proper medical attention." "I am not going anywhere with you," Delilah said. "I am exactly where I want to be." Her father's face reddened. "Stop this foolishness. You are coming home right now. We have a wedding to arrange, people are waiting. Do you have any idea the embarrassment you have caused? The scandal?" "I am already married," Delilah said. The words fell into the silence like stones into water. All three men stared at her. "You are what?" Her father said, his voice dangerous. "Married. To Benjamin Oliver, who owns this ranch. We were wed by Reverend Harrison in Medicine Bow 8 days ago. It is all legal and proper." "That is impossible," Thornton said flatly. "You are engaged to me. An engagement I never agreed to. An arrangement made without my knowledge or consent." "You are my daughter," her father shouted. "I have the right to arrange your marriage as I see fit." "Actually, you do not," said a voice behind the riders. Benjamin emerged from the barn, walking toward them with measured steps. "Not anymore. Delilah is my wife, which means she is under my protection now, not yours." "You," her father said, turning his anger on Benjamin. "You took advantage of my daughter when she was vulnerable and confused. That marriage is invalid. I will have it annulled." "On what grounds?" Benjamin asked calmly. "We were both of age, both willing, married by a legitimate preacher with witnesses. There are no grounds for annulment." "I will find grounds," her father threatened. "I have connections, lawyers. I will tie you up in court for years. I will destroy you." "You are welcome to try," Benjamin said. His voice was still calm, but there was steel underneath. "But while you are trying, Delilah remains my wife. The law is clear on that." Thornton had been studying Benjamin with cold calculation. "How much?" he said suddenly. "Excuse me. How much money do you want?" "You saw an opportunity, grabbed a rich man's daughter thinking to get a payday. Fine. Name your price. I will pay you to let her go." The insult hung in the air. Delilah saw Benjamin's jaw clench, but his voice remained level. "Delilah is not property to be bought and sold. And I did not marry her for money." "Then you are a fool as well as an opportunist," Thornton said. "Richard, we are wasting our time here. Let us go to the territorial court. We will have this sham marriage dissolved within a month." "You can try," Benjamin said, "but you will fail. And in the meantime, you will leave this property. Now." "Or what?" The hired man spoke up, his hand moving toward his gun. "Or you will be trespassing, and I will defend my property and my wife," Benjamin said. His hand had moved to his own gun, not drawing it but making his intention clear. "I do not want trouble, but I will not have my wife harassed on her own land." "Father, please," Delilah said, stepping forward. "Can you not see I am happy here, happier than I have been in years? I am sorry if I embarrassed you, but I could not marry Herbert. I would have died inside." "You were supposed to think about the family," her father said bitterly. "About honor and duty, not just yourself." "I am thinking of myself," Delilah said, "for the first time in my life, and I am not sorry for it." For a moment her father looked old and tired, then his face hardened again. "You have made your choice then. Do not come crying to me when this cowboy fails to provide for you, when you realize what you have thrown away. You are no longer my daughter. You are dead to me." The words should have hurt, and they did, but not as much as Delilah expected. Perhaps because she had already mourned the loss of her father's love long ago, when he began seeing her as a commodity rather than a person. "Then we have nothing more to say to each other," she said quietly. Goodbye, father. He mounted his horse without another word. Thornton gave her one last contemptuous look. You will regret this, girl. When you are scrubbing floors and birthing calves in the mud, you will remember what you could have had. I will remember that I chose freedom over a gilded cage, Delilah said, and I will be grateful for it every day. The three men rode away. Delilah and Benjamin stood side by side, watching until they disappeared from view. When they were finally gone, Delilah felt her legs go weak. Benjamin's hand was immediately at her elbow, supporting her. Come inside, he said gently. You should sit down. Inside the cabin, Delilah sank into a chair, trembling. The confrontation had taken more out of her than she realized. Benjamin poured her a cup of water and pressed it into her hands. You did well, he said. You stood your ground. He disowned me, Delilah said. My own father disowned me. I know, I am sorry. I am not, Delilah said, surprised to realize it was true. Or I am, but I am also relieved. It is done now. He made his choice and I made mine. There is clarity in that. Benjamin knelt in front of her chair so he could look into her eyes. You are not alone, Delilah. I meant what I said. You are my wife. You are under my protection. Whatever comes, we will face it together. Looking into his blue eyes, seeing the sincerity there, Delilah felt something shift in her chest. This man, this stranger who had saved her from a blizzard and offered her a choice when she had none, was becoming less of a stranger every day. She was beginning to trust him, to rely on him. And more than that, she was beginning to care for him. Thank you, she said softly, for standing with me. Always, he said simply. The weeks that followed were busy ones. Winter was hard in Wyoming, and there was always work to be done. Delilah threw herself into learning everything she could about ranch life. She learned to milk the cow Benjamin had bought, to churn butter, to preserve meat. She learned to read the signs of approaching weather, to judge the health of an animal at a glance. Benjamin was patient and encouraging, praising her successes and helping her learn from her failures without making her feel inadequate. Working beside him, Delilah began to see the man beneath the surface. He was kind but not soft, hardworking but not joyless. He had a dry sense of humor that surprised her at unexpected moments, and he was unfailingly considerate, always conscious of her comfort and well-being. At night, they lay on opposite sides of the bed, talking in the darkness. Delilah learned about his childhood, about his sister who had married and moved to Oregon, about the dreams he had for his ranch. He learned about her love of books, her secret writing attempts, her longing for adventure beyond the confines of polite society. You should keep writing, Benjamin said one night after she shyly admitted to having abandoned her stories. There is no reason to stop just because you are married. I have no time now, Delilah said. There is too much to do. We will make time, Benjamin said. Everyone needs something that is just theirs, something they do for the joy of it rather than necessity. If writing is that for you, then you should write. The next day, he surprised her with a leather-bound journal and a new pen he had purchased on a trip to Medicine Bow. For your stories, he said simply. Delilah was so touched she could not speak. She hugged the journal to her chest and had to blink back tears. In Cheyenne, her father had mocked her writing as a foolish waste of time. Herbert Thornton would have forbidden it entirely as unseemly. But Benjamin, her husband of circumstance, encouraged it. As winter slowly gave way to early spring, Delilah realized she was no longer sleeping on the far edge of the bed. Gradually, night by night, the distance between them had shrunk. Now they slept closer to the middle, close enough that sometimes she would wake to find Benjamin's hand near hers, close enough that she could hear his heartbeat. It felt natural, comfortable, safe. One morning in late March, Delilah woke to find Benjamin already up and dressed. He was packing supplies into a saddlebag with swift efficiency. "What is wrong?" she asked, sitting up. "One of my best cows is missing," Benjamin said, his face tight with worry. "Her and her new calf. Tom Henderson rode over early to tell me he saw signs of a mountain lion in the area. I need to find her before the lion does." "I will come with you," Delilah said, already getting out of bed. "It could be dangerous." "Then you should not go alone." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, dress warm and bring your rifle. If we do encounter the lion, we will need to scare it off." They rode out as soon as Delilah was ready, following the tracks Benjamin found near the northwest pasture. The snow was melting but still deep in places, making the going slow. Benjamin moved with focused intensity, reading signs Delilah was only beginning to understand. Broken branches here, disturbed snow there, the faint trail of a cow and calf moving away from the main herd. They had been riding for about 2 hours when they heard it. A low, threatening growl that made Delilah's blood run cold. Benjamin held up his hand, signaling her to stop. Ahead, in a small clearing, the cow stood protectively over her calf, and circling them, tail lashing, was the mountain lion. It was a big male, sleek and muscular, his tawny coat blending almost perfectly with the winter dead grass. He had clearly been stalking the cow and calf for some time, waiting for an opportunity. The cow was doing her best to keep between the predator and her baby, but she was tired and afraid. "Stay behind me," Benjamin said quietly, dismounting. He pulled his rifle from its scabbard. "We are going to make a lot of noise, try to scare him off. If he charges, shoot. Not to kill, just to scare." "Ready," Delilah nodded, her heart pounding. She dismounted and pulled out her own rifle, grateful for the shooting lessons Benjamin had given her over the winter. Benjamin fired a shot into the air. The crack echoed through the clearing. Go on, get out of here," Delilah added her voice to his, shouting and waving her arms. For a moment, the mountain lion froze, assessing the new threat. Then Benjamin fired again, closer this time, and the animal decided 2 armed humans were not worth the trouble. It turned and melted into the forest, disappearing as silently as it had come. The cow mooed pitifully. Benjamin approached slowly, hands out, speaking in a low, soothing voice. "Easy, girl. Easy now, you are safe. Let us get you home." It took some doing, but they managed to get the cow and calf moving back toward the ranch. The cow was skittish, jumping at every sound, but she seemed to understand they were helping. By the time they got the animals safely back with the herd, it was late afternoon and they were both exhausted. "You did well today," Benjamin said as they unsaddled the horses. Not many people would have kept their nerve with a mountain lion that close. "I was terrified," Delilah admitted. "Being brave does not mean not being afraid," Benjamin said. "It means doing what needs to be done despite the fear. You stood your ground. That matters." That night, as they lay in bed, Delilah found herself studying Benjamin's profile in the firelight. He had risked his own safety to save a cow and her calf, not because they were worth a fortune, but because they were under his protection, and he took that seriously. He had let Delilah come with him even though it might be dangerous, trusting her to handle herself rather than insisting she stay behind where it was safe. He treated her like a partner, like an equal. When had she started caring for him? She could not pinpoint the exact moment. It had been gradual, building day by day through small kindnesses and shared work and long conversations in the firelight. But lying there, looking at his face, she realized with startling clarity that she had fallen in love with her husband. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. This was not supposed to happen. Theirs was a marriage of convenience, a practical arrangement to solve a problem, but somewhere along the way it had become more, at least for her. Did Benjamin feel the same? Or was she just a responsibility he had taken on, a promise he was determined to keep? "You are staring," Benjamin said without opening his eyes. Delilah jumped. "I did not realize you were awake. Hard to sleep when someone is staring at you." He opened his eyes and turned his head to look at her. In the dim light, his blue eyes were dark and unreadable. "What are you thinking about, you?" Delilah said honestly. "Us, this marriage, this life. I was just thinking that it is not what I expected, in a good way or a bad way." "A good way," Delilah said softly. "A very good way. I am happy here, Benjamin, truly happy." For the first time I can remember, something shifted in his expression, softening. "I am glad. I want you to be happy." "Are you happy?" Delilah asked. "Was this what you wanted?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I did not know what I wanted until I found you in that blizzard," he said finally. "I thought I was content with solitude, with just me and the cattle and the land. But having you here has made me realize how lonely I was. So yes, Delilah, I am happy. Happier than I have been in a long time." "Good," Delilah said. She felt a surge of courage, emboldened by his words. "Benjamin, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I know our marriage started as a practical arrangement, a solution to a problem. But it has become more than that, at least for me. I care about you. I care about you a great deal. I think I might be falling in love with you, and I needed you to know that, even if you do not feel the same way." Benjamin went very still. For a horrible moment, Delilah thought she had made a terrible mistake. Then he reached across the space between them and took her hand, threading his fingers through hers. "Delilah," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I have been falling in love with you since the moment I saw you would rather freeze to death than accept a life you did not want. Watching you these past months, seeing your strength and your courage and your kind heart, has only made me love you more. I did not say anything because I did not want to pressure you, did not want you to feel obligated. But if you are asking whether I love you, the answer is yes. With everything I have." Joy flooded through Delilah, so intense it almost hurt. "Truly, truly." He moved closer, closing the distance between them. "May I kiss you? I mean really kiss you, not just the polite peck we shared at our wedding." In answer, Delilah closed the remaining distance and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was sweet and searching, full of question and answer both. Benjamin's hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite tenderness. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I love you," Delilah whispered. "I love you so much." "I love you too," Benjamin said. "My brave, beautiful wife." He kissed her again, and this time there was passion as well as tenderness. Delilah melted into his arms, into the warmth and strength of him. They explored each other slowly, carefully, learning the landscape of each other's bodies. When they finally came together, it was with tenderness and joy, a true marriage of hearts as well as law. Afterward they lay tangled together, Delilah's head on Benjamin's chest, his arms around her. She could hear his heartbeat, steady and strong. "I was so afraid," she said quietly. "When I rode into that blizzard, I thought I was choosing death over dishonor. I never imagined I would find this." "Find you? I am glad the storm brought you to me," Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to her hair. "Even if it was the most terrifying way to meet a future wife." Delilah laughed. "It was quite dramatic. You are quite dramatic, running into a blizzard instead of just saying no." "I did say no. Many times." No one was listening. Benjamin's arms tightened around her. "I am listening now. I will always listen to you, Delilah. Your voice, your choices, your dreams, they all matter to me. You matter to me, more than anything." "You matter to me too," Delilah said. She turned her head to kiss his chest, right over his heart. "I choose you, Benjamin Oliver. Every day for the rest of my life I choose you. And I choose you," he said. My stubborn, brave, beautiful wife who rode into a blizzard and into my life. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms, the fire burning low in the hearth. Outside, spring was coming to Wyoming. The snow was melting, and soon the meadows would be green and full of wildflowers. But inside the cabin, Delilah had already found her spring, her rebirth into a life she had chosen for herself. The months that followed were some of the happiest of Delilah's life. As the weather warmed, the ranch burst into life. Calves were born, the grass grew lush and green, and there was endless work to be done. Delilah worked alongside Benjamin from dawn until dusk, learning and growing stronger. Her hands became calloused, her skin tanned. She barely recognized the pale town girl she had been. But it was more than just physical changes. Delilah felt herself becoming more confident, more certain of her own strength and capabilities. When a fence needed mending, she mended it. When a calf got stuck in the mud, she pulled it out. She was no longer the dependent daughter waiting for someone else to solve her problems. She was a rancher's wife, a partner in building something real and lasting. And through it all, her love for Benjamin grew deeper. She loved the way he looked in the morning, hair tousled, and eyes still soft with sleep. She loved the way he sang off-key while working, the way he was always gentle with the animals, the way he listened to her ideas with genuine interest. She loved the way he held her at night, the way he kissed her forehead when he thought she was sleeping, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in his world. In June, Tom Henderson and his wife Mary came for dinner. It was the first time Delilah had entertained guests as a married woman, and she was nervous. But Mary was warm and welcoming, immediately putting Delilah at ease. "I am so glad Benjamin finally has someone," Mary said as they prepared food together while the men talked outside. "He has been alone too long, and I can see how happy you make him. I have known Benjamin for 3 years, and I have never seen him smile as much as he does when he looks at you." "He makes me happy too," Delilah said. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Mary smiled knowingly. "That is how it should be. Marriage can be hard work, especially out here where life is rough. But when you have the right partner, someone who sees you as an equal and treats you with respect and love, it makes all the difference." The dinner was a success. Afterward, Delilah and Benjamin stood on the porch, waving as Tom and Mary rode away into the sunset. "That went well," Benjamin said, sliding his arm around Delilah's waist. "It did. I like them. They like you too." "Mary told me she is glad I found someone who is not afraid of hard work and can hold her own." High praise from her. Delilah leaned into his embrace. "I am glad we have friends nearby. It is nice to know we are not completely alone out here." "We will never be alone," Benjamin said. "We have each other. That is all we need." In August, Delilah realized she was pregnant. She had missed her monthly courses for 2 months, and in the mornings she felt queasy. Mary had described these symptoms when talking about her own pregnancies, so Delilah was fairly certain. The thought filled her with a mixture of excitement and fear. She told Benjamin that evening after dinner. He was sitting at the table going over the ranch accounts, and she came to stand beside him. "Benjamin, I need to tell you something." He looked up, immediately attentive. "What is it?" "Are you all right?" "I am fine. Better than fine. I think I am with child." For a moment he simply stared at her. Then a smile broke across his face, brighter than she had ever seen. He stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around. "A baby," he said when he finally set her down. "We are going to have a baby." "Yes, I think so. Maybe in February or March." "Delilah, this is wonderful. Amazing." He cupped her face in his hands, his blue eyes shining. "You have made me the happiest man alive." "You are not worried." "Worried? About what?" About having another mouth to feed, about the expense, about all the work it will be. No, Benjamin said firmly. This baby is a blessing, our child, Delilah. A life we created together out of love. How could I be anything but overjoyed? His certainty eased Delilah's fears. I am glad. I want this baby. I want a family with you. And you shall have it, Benjamin promised. I will take care of you both, always. As her pregnancy progressed, Benjamin was endlessly solicitous. He insisted she not do heavy work, took over tasks he thought might be too strenuous, and worried constantly about her health. Delilah found it both touching and occasionally frustrating. I am pregnant, not an invalid, she said one day when he tried to prevent her from lifting a bucket of water. Women have been having babies and working right up until delivery since the beginning of time. Those women were not my wife carrying my child, Benjamin said stubbornly. I am allowed to worry. You are allowed to worry without treating me like I might break at any moment, Delilah countered. I need to stay strong for the birth. That means keeping active, not sitting around like a fragile flower. They compromised. Delilah continued to do light work, but agreed to rest more and let Benjamin handle the heaviest tasks. As winter approached again, Benjamin made sure they had extra supplies laid in, worried about being snowed in when Delilah went into labor. We could go to Cheyenne, he suggested one evening. Stay at a hotel near a doctor until after the baby comes. No, Delilah said firmly. I am not going back to Cheyenne. That is not my home anymore. This is my home, our home. Our baby will be born here. But what if something goes wrong? Then we will deal with it, Delilah said. Mary has agreed to come stay with us when my time is near. She has birthed 4 babies of her own and helped deliver a dozen more. I trust her. Benjamin still worried, but he agreed. True to her word, Mary came to stay at the cabin in late February when Delilah's time was near. Tom brought her over with supplies to last several weeks. Do not worry, Mary told Benjamin. I have done this many times. Your wife is strong and healthy. Everything will be fine. Delilah went into labor on a cold March morning, exactly 1 year and a month after Benjamin had found her in the blizzard. The pain was intense, worse than anything she had experienced, but she gritted her teeth and bore it. Benjamin held her hand, his face pale and frightened, but his grip was steady and strong. You can do this, he kept saying. You are the strongest person I know. You can do this. And she did. After 12 hours of labor, as the sun was setting, Delilah gave birth to a healthy baby boy. Mary placed the squalling infant on Delilah's chest, and she looked down at her son with wonder. He was red-faced and wrinkled, with a shock of dark hair and a remarkably strong set of lungs. But he was perfect, absolutely perfect. Delilah looked up at Benjamin, who was staring at the baby with an expression of pure awe. We have a son, she said softly. A son, Benjamin repeated. He reached out with one finger to touch the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, the infant's fingers curled around Benjamin's, gripping tight. He is perfect. You are perfect. I love you both so much. They named him James Richard Oliver. James for Benjamin's father, who had died when Benjamin was young. Richard for Delilah's mother, whose maiden name had been Richard. Mary stayed for another week, helping Delilah learn to nurse the baby and recover from the birth. When she finally left, hugging them both, Delilah felt confident she could manage. Being parents changed everything and nothing. The work was harder with a baby to care for, but Delilah had never been happier. She loved watching Benjamin with James, seeing his big, work-roughened hands so gentle as he held his son. James was a good baby, healthy and growing fast. His eyes, which had been dark at birth, were starting to lighten to blue like his father's. Spring turned to summer, and life settled into a new rhythm. Delilah would work with James tied against her chest in a sling Mary had taught her to make. He would sleep or watch the world with curious eyes while she went about her chores. Benjamin had built a cradle that sat near the hearth, and they would take turns rocking James when he was fussy. One evening in late summer, they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. James was asleep in Delilah's arms, his tiny fingers curled against her chest. Benjamin had his arm around her shoulders, and they sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky turn gold and pink and purple. "You ever think about what would have happened if I had married Herbert Thornton?" Delilah asked quietly. "I try not to," Benjamin admitted. "It makes me too angry to think about. I would be so miserable, trapped in a loveless marriage, probably with child anyway, but without any joy in it. My spirit would have died slowly day by day." She looked up at him. "Instead, I have this. I have you and James and this life we have built together. All because I ran into a blizzard and you found me." "Best storm I ever rode out into," Benjamin said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Even if it did nearly give me a heart attack when I found you half frozen in the snow." "Do you think my father ever wonders how I am? If I am happy, I do not know," Benjamin said honestly. "Part of me hopes he regrets what he did, how he treated you. But whether he does or not, it does not change anything. You made your choice and it was the right one." "I know," Delilah said. "I just wonder sometimes if he ever thinks of me, of his grandson he will never meet." "His loss," Benjamin said firmly. "James will grow up surrounded by love and freedom and the knowledge that his choices matter. That is more important than any grandfather." James stirred in Delilah's arms, making the little snuffling noises that meant he would wake soon, probably hungry. Delilah smiled down at him, feeling a rush of fierce love so intense it took her breath away. "I love our life," she said. "Every hard, beautiful, exhausting moment of it." "So do I," Benjamin said. "I love you, Delilah Oliver. Thank you for running into that blizzard. Thank you for choosing me." "Thank you for finding me," Delilah said. "Thank you for offering me a choice when I had none. Thank you for loving me, always," Benjamin promised. "For the rest of my life, I will love you and choose you, every single day." The years passed, each one bringing its own joys and challenges. James grew from a baby into a curious toddler, then an energetic boy. 2 years after James was born, Delilah gave birth to twin girls, Sarah and Emma, who had their mother's dark hair and their father's blue eyes. The cabin that had once seemed spacious now felt cozy and full of life, full of laughter and occasional tears and the constant noise of children. Benjamin expanded the ranch, buying more cattle and more land. Tom Henderson retired and sold his adjacent property to Benjamin, doubling their holdings. They built a larger house to accommodate their growing family. Though they kept the original cabin as a bunkhouse for the ranch hands, they now employed during busy seasons. Delilah continued to write, stealing moments here and there when the children were asleep or playing. She wrote stories about brave women who saved themselves, about love that grew from respect and partnership, about finding home in unexpected places. She even submitted a few stories to magazines back east, and to her shock and delight, several were accepted for publication. She published under a pseudonym, D.S. Oliver, and the money she earned she saved carefully, a nest egg for the children's education. When James was 10, Sarah and Emma 8, and Delilah was pregnant again with what would be their last child, another boy they would name Benjamin Jr., Delilah received an unexpected letter. It was from a lawyer in Cheyenne, informing her that her father had died. He had left no will, and his estate, considerably reduced from his glory days, was to be divided among his heirs. As his only child, Delilah was entitled to everything. She showed the letter to Benjamin that evening after the children were in bed. He read it carefully, then looked at her. "How do you feel?" he asked, sad, Delilah said honestly. "And angry and relieved, I think. Is that terrible?" "No, it is honest." Benjamin set the letter aside and took her hands. "What do you want to do?" "I do not need his money," Delilah said. "We have built a good life here without him. But I was thinking, maybe we could use it to help other young women. Set up some kind of fund, something that would help girls who need to escape situations like I did. Give them choices." Benjamin smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart flutter even after all these years. "I think that is a wonderful idea. Your mother would be proud." So they did exactly that. With the lawyer's help, they established the Sarah Richard Fund, named for Delilah's mother. It provided aid to young women seeking to escape forced marriages or abusive situations, offering them financial help to start over, to get education, to build independent lives. Over the years, it would help dozens of women, giving them the same chance Benjamin had given Delilah. The ranch continued to prosper. James grew into a fine young man, thoughtful and hardworking like his father. When he was 23, he married the daughter of a homesteader from Medicine Bow, a spirited girl named Catherine, who reminded Delilah powerfully of herself at that age. Sarah became a teacher, opening a small school on their property for the children of ranch families in the area. Emma had a gift for working with horses and helped manage that side of the ranch operation. Benjamin Jr., the youngest, was still finding his way. At 15, he was all long limbs and earnest enthusiasm, dividing his time between helping on the ranch and reading every book he could get his hands on. Delilah suspected he would go to college back east, and while the thought of him leaving pained her, she was proud of his ambition and curiosity. One spring evening, nearly 25 years after that fateful blizzard, Delilah and Benjamin sat on the porch of their house, watching the sunset. Their hair was touched with gray now, their faces lined with the marks of years of hard work and laughter and life lived fully. But Benjamin's eyes were still that startling blue, and when he looked at Delilah, she still felt like the most beautiful woman in the world. "You remember the first time we sat like this?" Benjamin asked, his arm around her shoulders. "That summer after James was born." "I remember," Delilah said. "We talked about how different my life would have been if I had married Herbert Thornton. You said your spirit would have died slowly," Benjamin recalled. "Instead, look at what you have done. You have raised 4 wonderful children, helped build this ranch into something remarkable, published stories that have touched people all over the country, and created a fund that has changed dozens of lives. I am so proud of you, Delilah, so proud of the woman you have become." "I could not have done any of it without you," Delilah said. "You gave me the freedom to become that woman. You saw me as a partner, an equal, not just a wife to serve you. You listened to my dreams and helped me achieve them. Everything good in my life comes from the moment you found me in that blizzard." "We found each other," Benjamin corrected. "You had the courage to run, to choose freedom even if it meant death. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "You offered me a choice when I had none," Delilah said. "You said choose me instead, and I did. Best decision I ever made." "Mine too," Benjamin said. He pressed a kiss to her hair, a gesture so familiar after all these years that it felt like home. "I love you, Delilah. Just as much as I did that first night when you told me you were falling in love with me. More even, because now I know all of you, every strong, stubborn, brilliant, beautiful part of you, and I love all of it." "I love you too," Delilah said. "Thank you for a wonderful life, Benjamin Oliver. Thank you for 25 years of love and partnership and adventure." "Here is to 25 more," Benjamin said. They sat together as the sun set over their land, over the ranch they had built and the life they had created. In the house behind them, they could hear their children moving around, preparing dinner, laughing at some shared joke. Soon they would be called inside to eat, to join in the warm chaos of family life. But for now, they sat together in the peace of evening, two people who had found each other in a blizzard and built a love that had lasted a lifetime. Delilah thought back to that desperate girl who had ridden into the storm, so certain that death was preferable to a life without choice. That girl could never have imagined this future, this richness of love and family and purpose. She had been so focused on escape that she had not dared to dream of what she might be escaping toward. But life had surprised her. Love had surprised her. Benjamin had surprised her, this gentle, strong man who saw her as an equal and loved her not in spite of her strength but because of it. Together, they had created something beautiful, a partnership built on respect and trust and genuine affection that had only deepened over the years. Their grandchildren would come soon, Delilah thought. James and Catherine were expecting their first child in the fall. There would be another generation to love and guide and watch grow. The ranch would continue, passed down through the family they had created. The fund would keep helping women find their own freedom and choices. The stories Delilah wrote would continue to be read, planting seeds of possibility in the minds of other young women who dared to dream of more. It was a legacy built from a single desperate choice made in a blizzard 25 years ago, a choice to risk everything for freedom, and the incredible fortune of a cowboy who rode out into that same storm and offered her a different kind of choice entirely. "What are you thinking about?" Benjamin asked, noticing her distant expression. "Legacy," Delilah said. "How one choice can ripple out and change everything. How running into a blizzard led to all of this." She gestured at the ranch, the house, the life they had built. "You ever regret it?" Benjamin asked. "The life you could have had in Cheyenne. The society, the comfort, the ease." "Never," Delilah said without hesitation. "That would not have been a life, just an existence. This, what we have built together, this is living. Real, messy, beautiful living. I would not trade a single moment of it." Even the hard moments. The years of drought, the cattle we lost to disease, the winters when money was tight. Especially those moments, Delilah said, because we faced them together. We solved the problems side by side as partners. In Cheyenne, I would have been decorative and useless, shut away from real life. Here, I have been part of building something real and lasting. I have been useful and needed and valued. That means everything. The dinner bell rang, Catherine's voice calling them inside. Benjamin stood and offered Delilah his hand, just as he had done countless times over the past 25 years. She took it, feeling the familiar calluses, the strength that had always made her feel safe. "Come on, Mrs. Oliver," Benjamin said with a smile. "Our family awaits." "Lead the way, Mr. Oliver," Delilah said, returning his smile. Hand in hand they walked into their home, into the light and warmth and love that filled every corner. Behind them, the sun finished setting over the Wyoming landscape, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. A new night was beginning, but it held no fear for them. They had weathered storms, both literal and metaphorical. They had built a life from nothing but courage and hard work and love, and it was more than enough. It was everything. Years later, when Delilah was an old woman with silver hair and Benjamin's face was deeply lined but his blue eyes still clear and bright, they would tell their grandchildren and great-grandchildren the story of how they met. The children would listen with wide eyes to the tale of the blizzard, the desperate escape, the cabin in the storm. "Were you scared, great-grandma?" one of the little ones would always ask. "Terrified," Delilah would answer honestly, "but I was more scared of losing myself than I was of dying." Sometimes you have to risk everything for the chance to truly live. And great-grandpa found you and saved you, another child would say, the romance of it clear in their voice. Actually, Benjamin would correct gently, your great-grandmother saved herself when she rode into that storm and chose freedom. I just offered her another option when she needed one. She did not need saving. She needed a choice. And I chose wisely, Delilah would add, squeezing Benjamin's hand. I chose love and partnership and a life of my own making. Best choice I ever made. The children would eventually grow bored with the old story they had heard many times, running off to play or help with chores. But Delilah and Benjamin would remain where they were, still holding hands after all those years, still choosing each other every single day. On a warm summer day in their 70th year of life, Benjamin's 48th year on Earth and Delilah's 47th, they sat together on the same porch where they had spent so many evenings. The ranch sprawled out before them, prosperous and thriving under James's management now. Their children were all settled and happy, their grandchildren growing like weeds, and 2 great-grandchildren had recently been born. It has been a good life, Benjamin said quietly. The best, Delilah agreed. You remember what I said to you that first day when I found you in the snow? You said a lot of things. You talked me through what I now realize was the early stages of hypothermia. Benjamin chuckled. I mean later, when you were safe and warm, I said you had a choice, that you did not have to go back if you did not wish to. I remember. It was the first time anyone had spoken to me like my choices mattered. They did matter. They do matter. Your choices shape this whole life we have built. He turned to look at her, his blue eyes still capable of making her heart skip a beat even after all these years. I want you to know that I would do it all again. Every moment, every hardship, every joy. I would choose you again in a heartbeat. And I would choose you, Delilah said, leaning her head on his shoulder. Every time in every life I would choose you. They sat together as the sun set once more over their land, over the life they had built from a desperate escape and an impulsive proposal, and a love that had grown deeper and stronger with every passing year. The wind whispered through the grass, carrying with it the sounds of the ranch, of life continuing in its eternal rhythms. Delilah thought of the frightened girl she had been, riding into a blizzard with no plan beyond escape. She thought of the brave young man who had ridden into that same storm and offered her a different future. She thought of all the years between then and now, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and struggles, the ordinary moments that made up a life well lived, and she was grateful. Grateful for the storm that had brought them together, grateful for the courage that had carried them through, grateful for the love that had sustained them. Grateful for every single moment of the wild, beautiful, imperfect life they had created together. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Delilah and Benjamin went inside together, ready for whatever the next day would bring. Because they knew now, after all these years, that whatever came, they would face it together. Side by side, hand in hand, choosing each other over and over again. And that, Delilah thought as she closed the door behind them, was the greatest happiness anyone could ask for. Not a life free of struggle, but a life full of love. Not perfection, but partnership. Not rescue, but choice. That was the true ending to the story that had begun in a blizzard so many years ago. Not an ending at all, really, but a beginning that had lasted a lifetime and would continue in the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who carried their legacy forward. The girl who escaped into the blizzard had found her home, and the cowboy who saved her had found his heart. Together, they had found a love that endured through every season, as constant as the Wyoming sky and as deep as the roots they had planted in this good earth. It was enough. It was everything, It was theirs,